Shit. Shit. We back. Okay, wait. It's season 2, guys. Gotta get hype.
I'm hyped.
Season 2. It's season 2. I'm Wilson Lai.
I'm Benjamin Yap.
I'm Eli Sands.
You're listening to Deep Cut. Hey, Ben. What's the most you've ever lost on a coin toss?
His virginity.
Nice. Welcome back, friends, folks from all over. I always forgot how to podcast.
Okay, welcome back everyone to season 2 of Deep Cut. Eli, you want to start us off with a little introduction again?
Yes. On Deep Cut, we compare a director's most popular film with a personal favorite chosen by one of us.
We also discuss the director's life and career to bring in context that helps us view their movies as they may want us to.
Welcome to season 2 of Deep Cut. Woo! We have a fun run of episodes in the pipeline for you, and we are gonna try to avoid a sophomore slump. We're gonna try our best.
I say we lean into it.
Yeah, we'll lean into the slump.
Yeah, I'm slumping really hard.
This episode is going to be 1 hour of silence and breathing.
Well, okay, first, a little bit of housekeeping. If you heard us before in our first season, we usually had one episode where we talked about both the popular pick and our personal favorite. But this season, we're going to be splitting up our popular pick and deep cut pick into separate individual episodes. For you, that means you get more episodes. And for us, we have to record more episodes.
Yeah.
But they'll be shorter episodes.
You only watch one movie to listen.
Yeah, the homework you have to do is not going to be
Don't
that
call it
much.
homework.
Yeah, no, it's not homework.
Fun work.
Okay. But since this is our big season opener, we're going to do a special twist on that. We're talking about Joel and Ethan Coen. They have a huge, reputable filmography. So we're going to talk about a popular pick, which we're doing today. And we're going to do 3 deep cut pick episodes, which means each of us gets to pick one movie from the filmography to talk about.
You are listening to the popular pick episode right now. We went back and forth on which movie that would be, because you could really make the case for a few different ones by the Coens as to which is the popular pick. Ultimately, we decided to go with the Coens' 2007 Best Picture Academy Award winning No Country for Old Men.
And if you want to know our 3 upcoming Coen Deep Cut picks, stay tuned on our feed here and on our social media at Deep Cut Pod.
First, let's get some foundational information on the Coen brothers.
Okay, here we go. Well, as the resident Coen noob, I volunteered to do this very brief and very bare bones introduction to Joel and Ethan Coen. Through the course of these next 4 episodes, we can all sort of fill in the gaps a little bit, listeners and co-hosts. Joel Coen was born November 29th, 1954. Ethan Coen was born September 21st, 1957. They're brothers. They're popularly known as the Coen brothers. They're American film directors, producers, screenwriters, and editors. They were both born and raised in Minnesota and developed a love for cinema through watching movies, specifically Italian movies, on their television. Joel went to NYU for film production, and Ethan went to some other school that I forgot to write down. But it was not for film, so I decided not to write it down.
He studied philosophy, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, it was
I was
philosophy.
reading about this. Yeah, right? Yeah.
And in 1984, the brothers wrote and directed Blood Simple, which was their first feature film together. And it was set in Texas. The film tells the tale of a shifty, sleazy bar owner who hires a private detective to kill his wife and her lover. The film contains elements or themes or ideas that point to future film projects that Joel and Ethan will work on later on in their career, which included distinctive homages to genre movies, in this case, noir and horror, plot twist layered over a simple story, dark humor, and mise-en-scène. The film was well received and won awards for Joel's direction at both the Sundance and Independent Spirit Awards. The The brothers went on to write and direct around 24 films and were recognized for their talents, having been nominated for a number of awards and achievements.
Wait, where do you get this number 24 from?
From Letterboxd.
I only counted 18.
That it probably includes shorts and and
That includes shorts and like a film that's not even made
other
yet.
films. I said around 24 films. You don't have to fact check. I'm not Wikipedia, even though I did draw a lot of these from Wikipedia. I'm not Wikipedia.
Or deep cut, not deep fact.
No Country for Old Men, which is the film that we're going to talk about today, won them the Best Oscar for Directing and Best Film, as well as a BAFTA for Best Director. They were also awarded the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay for Fargo in 1996, which is a film that I don't think we're going to talk about on the pod
We might talk about it tangentially.
But
Probably
yes,
not.
Yes.
I have one fun fact about Fargo. I don't know if you guys seen it recently, but I didn't notice this until today. It's just one thing. It's the briefcase. The briefcase in Fargo is exactly the same as the briefcase in No Country.
That's so funny.
Wow.
And I didn't realize this until I watched both of them on the same
Yeah.
day. And I was like, wait a minute. It's like a continuation.
Because it's a briefcase that opens up really weirdly. It has like flaps on the side.
It's like a boxy briefcase. I've had one of those in my house before.
Wow.
Ben's trying to tell us he has illegal drug money.
You don't do drugs.
I don't sell drugs in my home.
As the Coen noob, I have a question.
Yeah.
So I would say that both Fargo and No Country for Old Men are popular picks. How did we decide on going with No Country for Old Men for this episode?
No idea.
I think I might have been the driver on that one. It's sort of an arbitrary deciding point is the accolades that No Country received or like the critical praise it received.
Mm-hmm.
But with No Country, I would argue that it is their technically finest film. Just the craft is out of this world on the visual and something I really want to talk about, sonic front. Everything looks and sounds incredible. The performances are all, everyone's showing up tenfold.
Just to add to this conversation, which is completely irrelevant, which is
Yes.
more popular, quote unquote, right? Completely useless conversation. I feel like Fargo probably takes that crown actually.
Oh.
Because I feel like when people think of the Coens, they think of Fargo.
Well, I think because Fargo is more classically Coen's.
Yeah.
Because No Country is so serious of a movie, and I feel like the Coens are known for their humor a lot more.
When you think about the Coens, when you think about what people... This is completely a feeling of the universe thing. Like if I just telepathically connect with everyone who has watched a Coen Brothers movie, I feel like Fargo is the one on top. In terms of just being in people's minds. But I don't know. I mean, on Letterboxd, Fargo is in front of No Country, but
Yeah.
that's also not relevant.
We're unfortunately not a Letterboxd sponsored podcast. Hashtag get that Letterboxd sponsorship.
Not yet.
Oh, and last Coen Brothers fact, and arguably most important, Joel has been married to actress Frances McDormand since 1984.
Since Blood Simple.
What a power couple.
That's nice. The Coen brothers are also the deep cut directors to whom I've been physically the closest. At the 2018 New York Film Festival, Ethan Coen walked past me before a screening of Roma.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice. I don't know what he looks like.
So let's talk a little bit about our personal connections to the Coens. Ben, what was the first Coen movie that you encountered?
I honestly cannot remember. I will say that because of the podcast, I decided to go back into the Coens and I'm trying to rewatch as much as I possibly can. So in the past week, I've seen, I think, 6 Coen films.
Wow.
And the last time I did this was probably when I was in my late teens or early 20s, which is a long time ago.
Baby Ben.
And I haven't really gone back to revisit those films until last week, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. And I always have thought of myself as being a fan of the Coens, so now I'm kind of reassessing my relationship to their films. I can't remember which is the first one. I don't have records of that. Probably Fargo, because I was probably just trawling film websites and trying to find what I should be watching. Fargo probably came up first. Could be No Country as well. But it's been fun, like, to rewatch them and have such a vague, hazy memory of everything. And being like, oh, I kind of remember the scene, but also not. I don't remember, like, this other thing or this weird thing. Yeah, because I've seen everything except Intolerable Cruelty, Hudsucker Proxy, and The Lady Killers.
Wow.
Everything else I've seen, which is probably one of the highest like filmography view counts I've had of any directors I've seen. And yet I could not remember much from the Coens until last week because everything had been like kind of pushed to the back of my mind so far.
I think it's a similar thing for me where it feels like they were always there. I know the first one of theirs that I saw in theaters was True Grit, which is a movie that I love. I also have a lot of distinct memories of scenes. With things like No Country, I remember a lot of sounds in particular. For me, they feel very defining as a presence in American culture and particularly American Jewish sensibility. I think one of the nice things about spending so much time with the Coens across these upcoming 4 episodes is that they do have such a wide-spanning filmography in terms of tone and theme, but there is a lot of coherence between the movies. I think when we're talking about one, we're going to be able to tie in another 5 at any point.
They're very diverse, but also very singular, which is confusing.
Yeah.
A lot of them are about kind of similar themes and issues, but they span genres and tones. Although I will say that revisiting the Coens has made me feel like I don't think I'm as much of a Coen fan as I used to be when I was first watching them. Like, I feel they don't hold as much weight in my mind anymore. I think it's also because I think the more recent Coen films have been quite underwhelming. Hail Caesar and Ballad of Buster Scruggs, I had really no love for. True Grit, I don't quite remember, but it didn't really leave an impression on me in the long run. Whereas like with No Country, I remember certain scenes and images. With Fargo as well.
That makes sense. There are a few notable ones that I have not much love for, like Barton Fink I don't particularly like. But then there are just enough of their movies that continue to be really important to me and distinctive and always remain fresh in my memory. And, you know, I have on my YouTube account a private playlist of my favorite scenes across any, and a bunch of those are from those few Coen movies.
What a nerd.
Because of my recent like saturation of Coen film scenes in my mind and like being able to very quickly juxtapose 2 different stories from 2 different films from their filmography, I've realized that when one film doesn't quite do it for me from their filmography, sometimes it is explained by watching a different one. Because they are all talking about the same stuff. And then because they can be kind of inscrutable sometimes in the themes and the things they're trying to say, when you watch something else, they kind of give you a bit of a hint or a bigger hint into what they were trying to say in a different film. Because they all kind of point towards the same thing. They kind of are commenting on the same stuff, always, again and again. When you watch a film, you're like, what is this about? I was watching A Serious Man and being a bit thrown by it and being like, I'm not really sure about this. But then, strangely enough, watching Big Lebowski was what kind of gave me some clarity on A Serious Man.
Wow.
Which you wouldn't think has a connection, but there is a connection.
Yeah, I think the other way that you can slice up their filmography is between drama, thrillers, and comedies, specifically dark comedies. But there's so much DNA in common across that binary that it's almost a useless division.
Yeah.
But I do think that their comedies tend to be of a piece, and things like, you know, Blood Simple has a lot of the blueprint for No Country for Old Men. A lot of their thrillers have things in common in that way.
I see. I feel like I'm playing a lot of catch up these few weeks just because you two have seen a big chunk of the Coen's filmography, and before this week I had only seen 3 Coen Brothers movies.
Which were the 3?
Okay, the first Coen Brothers movie, I had no choice but to watch it. It was Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And it was because I was projecting for a film class in college, and it was one of the films that were playing. And I was like, whoa, this is interesting. It has George Clooney in it. And that made very clear to me their tone and their style, especially when it came to like comedies. And then I watched Fargo after that, and I was like, oh, this makes sense now. But then also wasn't like moved enough to pursue their filmography even more.
Yeah, especially when Fargo is supposed to be like one of the best ones.
Well,
right?
it's good. It's good. It's good.
It's
like
good,
the performances are great, and I watched like 3 seasons of the TV show. Like it's not like it was worth following up on, but just not in the Coen's direction. But I think there was like a really distinct directorial style, and also a very interesting play on like actions and consequences. We talked about Farhadi last season and how he loves to play with action and consequences, but that's more like grounded in realism. But I feel like this is more like a mythic, if you do something bad, like something bad will happen to you. And then I saw Raising Arizona, which I didn't really care for, to be honest.
Yeah.
Nick Cage is just okay, which is like, I don't know.
Ooh, we probably just lost some listeners there.
I'm waiting to rewatch it so I can reassess what I feel about it.
A friend of the podcast, Kira Newmark and Emily Fair, showed me this movie, and they were like so hyped for me to watch it, and then I was like, I was so bored and felt really bad.
Should I make you guys watch it again?
I don't mind watching it again. I could be wrong.
It might be my deep cut pick, but I gotta think.
But like crazy turn of events this week, I watched No Country for Old Men. I was like, holy shit, my world's like blown open. This is like one of the best films ever made, or at least like in the 2000s, like definitely like one of the best films in the 2000s. And then I saw Inside Llewyn Davis, and I was like, they could do that as well? That's fucked up. That's like really fucked up. They're like not allowed to do that.
They're not allowed to have the talent.
Well, you could have talent doing one thing, right? Like you could have talent making like gritty, like semi-comedic murder thriller shit, yeah, with like that. But then you can't make really good movies about folk singers. Like you can't do that. You can't do both.
Sensitive
Sorry.
character studies.
Yeah.
But they have such wide range and depth of what they can do.
Yes. It is so impressive.
Two things that you said just now that I wanted to loop back to. I want to bookmark how they use George Clooney. In one of our upcoming deep cut picks, we are really going to have to dig into how they use George Clooney, because the way that they cast him against his star persona is fascinating.
Ooh.
And then also, I have a hot take about Fargo.
Yeah.
I think that story works better as a TV show, with the really expansive, like multiple threads looping in and out, with the wide net of consequences, at least for the first 2 seasons. But I also do like the movie a lot.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. I might agree with you.
I might agree with you as well.
It is also like they're different stories, similar themes with
Yeah.
different stories.
That's
and
true.
It's definitely like it's just like a Coen brothers homage. Now that I've seen a little more of their films.
The film is interesting because the film is more of a parable because
Yeah.
it's so short. I didn't realize how short this film was, whereas the series is an epic, you know?
Yes.
Like a long series of unfortunate crazy events, right? But Fargo, the film, is really just this guy tells you this crazy story he read in the paper. That's kind of what it feels like.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it has that vibe. But I don't want to go too much into Fargo because it's also fresh in my mind.
Let's talk about the movie we're supposed to talk about.
Yes.
Yeah, which is friggin' amazing.
Boom, boom.
So a little background on the creation of No Country for Old Men. Hollywood producer and notoriously, what do I even say here? Like,
Fuck you, Scott Rudin. That's what we say.
he bought the rights to the Cormac McCarthy novel of the same name and suggested adapting it to the Coens.
I have it right here.
Ooh, Ben's holding up the book in the video chat.
Ooh.
I read the first 50 pages last night just to get a feel for it.
Is it good?
It reads like a screenplay.
Huh. It was filmed in spring 2006 in New Mexico and Texas with a budget of $25 million. And worldwide, it grossed over $171 million and domestically $74 million.
That is considered a box office success.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
Made profit.
But the other thing going into this conversation that we should really highlight are some of the key collaborators on this movie, because there are some really heavy hitters working here. Of course, Joel and Ethan Coen. On cinematography is Roger Deakins, of course, frequent Coen collaborator and just one of the best living cinematographers. The score, which is minimal but there, is written by Carter Burwell, who's often either the score composer or a music supervisor for the Coens. He's also everywhere in Hollywood.
Yeah, Carter.
And I really, really want to shout out the sound team on No Country. So the supervising sound editor is Skip Lievsay. If you don't know that name, he is a massively important sound designer and sound editor in Hollywood. He's responsible for the sound on things like Roma and Uncut Gems and most of the Coen's filmography dating back to Blood Simple.
You just listed 2 movies with really great sound editing.
Yes, yeah. This is a quick sidebar. I will never forgive the Oscars for the year that Roma was up for Sound Awards, giving the sound awards to
It was Bo Rap, right?
Bohemian Rhapsody. Can you believe that?
Oh,
People listened and said, "Oh, Queen, it must have sound editing and sound mixing."
that's why the Oscars are
Yeah.
dumb.
Instead of the landmark Dolby achievement that is Roma. Okay, rant over. The sound designer on No Country is Craig Berkey. Peter F. Kurland was the production sound mixer on set. The Coens get great sound on set, and that's important. We have a few examples. And Greg Orloff did Foley mixing. This is an all-star sound team, and it matters in this movie. The things that you come away with are so dependent on sound.
Let's put their faces on the cover of the episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And down.
Yes, Skip, hero of this movie, MVP.
I love you, Skip.
Shout out to Skip. You talked about the production collaborators, but let's talk about a little bit about this cast.
Yeah.
Monster cast.
A pretty
Yes.
crazy cast.
Class.
You have Bardem,
Bardem. Oh boy.
you have Brolin, you have Tommy Lee Jones,
TLJ.
TLJ, you have oh shit, I'm blanking on her name.
Kelly MacDonald.
Yes, Kelly MacDonald.
With a flawless Texan accent.
Oh yeah, I forget she's
She's Irish.
Irish.
Oh, I was like, why? She could have been from Texas. Who knows? But no, she's from Ireland.
Those are really the key players, but then the bit characters, all this.
Woody Harrelson,
Woody Harrelson,
as
yeah.
Carson Wells.
Mhm,
Oh, I
mhm,
forgot he was in
mhm.
this movie, and I just forgot again.
Stephen
He
Root.
carries so much swag with him in this movie. It's so great.
Okay, talking about another collaborator here. The costumes team was Mary Zofres, Laurie Delap, and Lizanne Scaffine. The jacket that Carson Wells, Woody Harrelson's character, wears is like a business suit, but it has the kind of upper shoulder and upper back trim of like a cowboy jacket.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Hmm.
What an
Yes,
incredible
yes,
decision that
it's
is.
So good. Just the small things. And also for this movie, they're wearing the same clothes the whole time. So you gotta, when you pick their outfits, you gotta pick ones that count.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wait, back to the cast. Javier Bardem, utterly incredible performance.
Right.
Is actually insane.
Yeah.
There's not much to say except that it is actually terrifying to watch.
It really is.
One of the things I think about with the positioning of his character, who's Anton Chigurh, the mysterious hitman who's after the money that Josh Brolin's character chances upon, is that I think a lot about how we get access to him. We have a lot of scenes where we're experiencing his actions. We're very close to him. The camera's very close to him. But he's still something of a puzzle. You know, we get a sense of his principles, but we have no backstory on him. And Javier Bardem's performance really contributes to that because he is conveying so much intention and will in his actions while also remaining pretty inscrutable. There's some reactions that he has to things where you look at his face and you're like, what is this guy thinking and feeling? I think about his conversation with Carson Wells before he shoots him in Carson's hotel room.
Hmm.
And he says something, philosophical and strange. And Carson Wells says, "You go to hell." And the way that Chigurh tilts his head and says, all right. It's like, did you hear what he said? Like, what are you responding to here? What are you thinking?
It's crazy.
He's such a force of nature.
A force of evil.
Woo!
I think what's interesting about the character of Anton Chigurh is that on the macro level, he is supposed to play this role of a force of evil, like something mythical, something unexplainable, something that is powerful and almost like this thing that you cannot touch.
Mm-hmm.
He always finds you and you can't touch him and he always gets away. There's something like an evil spirit. He's not really human. But even though I said that, Javier Bardem's performance makes sure that you understand he's still a little human in there. Because he has those little reactions to those things, his conversations with all the people that he kills.
Right.
There's something human there. It's just not the human that we like to see. You know?
Yeah.
The-
I was sort of reminded of, do you guys know in Terminator 2 Judgment Day when
I don't think I've seen that actually.
Oh, it's it's the best Terminator. It's really good. If we ever do a James Cameron series, we should do Terminator 2. But it's sort of like he's halfway. He's still a robot, like he's still a killing robot, but he's like starting to like grasp onto like some human qualities. And it was really fascinating to see Schwarzenegger struggle through that.
I have human qualities.
And Bardem doing it like to a T with like a horrible wig on that on anyone else would be incredibly distracting and hilarious, but his just pure force of evil slamming through any haters of the wig.
He's still hot.
I wouldn't go that far. I would not go that far, Eli.
I'd go that far. One of the other things that humanizes Bardem's character, while again also keeping him kind of mysterious, is the engine of most of his scenes, and a lot of scenes in the movie really, is what is sometimes called process sequencing. This is when a scene is built off of a character going about an action with a concrete physical goal at the end of it, completing a task, doing a chore even, you could say.
Yeah, we love that
We
here.
love process. How do you call it? Process?
We love process.
Sequencing.
Yes, process sequencing. I'm going to write that down. Keep on going.
But it's not just that we're watching him complete a task. It's that we're also figuring out what the goal he has is as the scene goes on. Think about the scene after a shootout with Llewellyn Moss in the street. He goes to a pharmacy, he sets a gas tank on fire on a nearby car, and with the distraction that creates, he goes into the pharmacy and steals medical supplies, which he'll then use to treat his bullet wound. But you don't know that that's what his goal is going into that scene. You only know that if you've seen the movie already. And on a first-time viewing, you're piecing together what he's doing as you're observing his process. There's a lot of information that you're learning in the moment without being explained. That both lets us into what his goal is and keeps us at a distance from figuring out what he's really about, moment to moment.
The kind of quote-unquote mystery of what he's doing is the thing that draws you in.
Yes,
Right,
exactly.
And then, like, it keeps you interested. And you have this also with Llewellyn Moss as well, because he also has these process sequences.
Right.
But that pharmacy scene, I wrote in my notes, this is the most ridiculous way to rob a pharmacy. Like, the most outlandish thing you could really be doing. And he's doing it and nobody sees this? Like, what?
Yeah. But it's so weird because he's such a wild card
Yeah.
that even when you think you know what he's trying to achieve, maybe that's not even like what he's going for, because he just like maybe just wants to destruct something or he just wants to kill someone. He's such a wild card, and it's so fascinating to see him on screen, and you're scared as a viewer. You're scared for the characters around him. Like, I keep on thinking about that gas station scene, which is scripted so beautifully,
Yes.
where he goes up to the clerk and he has this conversation, and you can tell that the clerk is really ticking him off. And then it gets to the point where he brings out his classic coin toss, where it determines whether they get to live or they get killed by him, whether they call it correctly or not correctly. And the guy's still not getting it. And he just never really gets it by the end of the scene.
Yeah, he doesn't get it.
As an audience member, my heart's thumping. I'm at the edge of my seat. I'm like, don't do it. And the whole scene is filmed in just basically 2 medium close-ups that just cut back and forth. And it's just like a regular conversation scene. But the way that the dialogue is written and how it is timed out in the edit, it's one of the most tense scenes in the entire film.
Wait, I got 2 notes about that scene. First thing is, most of that scene is word for word from the book, because it's in the first few pages, word for word. But there's one key difference, which is that at the end of the scene in the book, Chigurh has a monologue. In the film, he doesn't.
Good.
He just walks away, which I think is the Coens at their best when they're very efficient filmmakers. They don't ever say too much. They try to say less, and then they always let you fill in the blanks. And so in the book, he kind of talks too much, and he's trying to like give his worldview or whatever. It's too much. And second thing, one of my favorite shots from that sequence, aside from those 2 shots, is the rapper. Incredible insert.
Yes.
That
yes.
is used for tension. It's kind of ridiculous, and the Coens have such a talent for finding perfect inserts
Mm.
that aren't just about conveying information, they're about conveying tone or to give you an idea of character.
Right.
And they do it very, very well. I'm sure there's countless examples across this filmography.
That shot has its own internal timing and rhythm that contributes to the edit.
Right.
And it's that concrete timing that creates tone as well. Another thing that we can say about Anton Chigurh is that he has some sounds associated with him. So most of the movie operates without a score. Removing the score was Ethan Coen's idea, and Lievsay says, quote, "The idea here was to remove the safety net that lets the audience feel like they know what's going to happen." End quote. There are 16 minutes total, including the credits, where non-diegetic music comes in, written by Carter Burwell using singing bowls. I've seen No Country for Old Men 3 times. This is the first time when I noticed score at all. At the end, when the Sheriff Ed Tom Bell returns to the motel and he almost encounters Chigurh, there's a bit of this low kind of drone, and I didn't notice it, but I read online that there's score in this gas station scene. So it's scenes associated with Chigurh. He brings this kind of otherworldly, non-diegetic, mythical drone with him. And also, I want to mention the sound of his weapons as a way to bridge in more information about the sound here. So he has a captive bolt pistol, and that is the sound of a pneumatic nail gun. About the nail gun, Craig Berkey says, quote, "I wasn't looking for authenticity, so I didn't even research cattle guns. I just knew it had to be impactful with that two-part sound like a cha-chung," end quote. Which is just so scary. When I think about sounds that I remember from No Country for Old Men, it's that. And I also think about the pneumatic shotgun with the huge silencer that Chigurh has. That sound is comprised of a few different elements that got picked up in a completely unrelated scene. The Coens were filming and a TV was on, maybe in Moss's trailer, and the sound recordist picked up some bass-heavy thumps from the TV that was playing. That sound goes into Chigurh's shotgun. But I think it's notable that that's not a sound that's from a sound library or even constructed from independent recordings. It's a sound that got picked up on set by the production sound mixer Peter F. Kurland, right? So that's the kind of detail that makes this sound team so sharp, is that they're using things from the movie and repurposing them in clever ways to make this entirely distinctive sound. And also, it sounds different in different contexts. When it's in the motel room, it sounds different than when Chigurh is shooting from the hotel balcony out onto the ground where Moss is, you know?
Yeah.
That kind of thing makes each scene distinctive in my memory.
Yeah.
It's like a personality marker. In our Alfredson episode, we mentioned a quote from him where he talked about the importance of silence to break up sound effects to allow the audience to really hear it. That's absolutely running through this movie.
So true. I feel like they're so comfortable in the silence of this movie and just making you as an audience like wait for the next sound.
Yeah.
And just like wait in fear.
And then the only other thing is that Bardem easily has the lowest register voice of the cast. And that is intimidating too.
Yeah. It's so fun to just hear this movie because even like, yeah, you were talking about like even the ambience of every location is so distinct and adds to it. And it seems like so much fun working on a sound team, but also like out of all the things on a film set, I feel like that's the job that I could not do out of everything. So
everything else you could do that.
Not to say that I could do them, but that's the farthest of my skill set. That's why I think it's like so interesting to see these masters at work because they're just like pulling sounds from places. It's crazy.
Yeah. Even more than the ambience of every location, every scene is different. Within a scene, the ambience changes when the camera cuts.
Yes.
So think about Moss on the plains as he's pursuing the deer that he's shot. When the camera cuts to a new spot, the wind shifts. Okay? It's like a sonic jump cut.
Yes.
But the effect of that is that we hear what the camera could conceivably hear.
Right.
It keeps us very grounded and physically present in the space.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what keeps the tension up too.
Because what usually people do is carry on the sound even while the camera cuts, but they're intentionally changing the ambience of it to like draw attention to the sound design and make people pay attention to what they're hearing.
Yeah, I think they would probably disagree with, draw attention to the sound design,
Right.
but it does make you lean in and really listen for what the characters are listening for.
Right.
Because so much of this movie is about detection and finding the next clue And they're doing that by listening closely. Think about Llewellyn Moss in his hotel room when he knows that Chigurh has found him and is creeping up. There's a great interview with the sound team on undesigningsound.org from 2007. And they talk about how there are sounds of Chigurh unscrewing a light bulb to turn off the light.
Yes.
That I can't hear when I listen on my computer or with my headphones or even on a TV in a living room. But you could probably hear in a theater, but it's still there.
Well, I heard it.
Oh.
I don't think I noticed, even if I could hear it.
It's so subtle, but they really thought about what's happening in every conceivable space that the camera could be hearing.
Should we talk about the editing of that scene? Because that scene
Woo!
was when I was like, oh yeah, this movie is a masterpiece. I just remember.
Crazy scene.
Yeah, because that scene, the tension is insane. You know he's not gonna die because it's the first 20 minutes of the movie, but it still feels like your heart's gonna fall out your chest.
Yeah.
It's not the first 20 minutes of the movie. Wait.
Okay, maybe the first hour.
Okay. Yeah, within the first hour. It's in the hotel, right?
That's like the halfway point.
Within the first hour.
That's a scene that I got shown in Sight and Sound, which is a production class, as an example of how to use lighting effectively in a scene. The play of shadow and light and lack thereof in ratcheting up tension.
Wait, which hotel scene are we talking about? Because I realized there's many hotel scenes.
Oh, I thought it's the one where Josh Brolin's sitting there, and then it's the second hotel, the one where that's upstairs.
The first one is the motel. The hotel has stairs, and it leads to the street shootout scene.
I'm talking about the first motel right now.
Okay.
Let's talk about both because they're both incredibly constructed scenes.
Because they're both really great scenes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, in the motel scene, the cuts back to Moss from Chigurh's experience shooting the cartel men are motivated by sound. So it's whenever a loud shot goes off, it cuts back to Moss. And that's just another thing that puts us into the shoes of the characters.
Right.
It's cutting based on the attention and what characters notice.
The thing that I thought about when I watched that scene was that at the end, when Chigurh kills the Mexicans who were looking for the case of money, I was a bit confused at that point. I was like, why are there people here and why do they have guns? But then I kind of figured it out later on in the film that there was other parties looking for the money.
Yeah.
But when Chigurh looks into that vent and sees the scratch marks, the first thought I had was, I didn't hear that. That kind of tells you that there are so many things that you are listening to, and when you don't hear something, you know you've been distracted. Or I don't know whether I was distracted or I was misled. You know what I mean?
We get that information from seeing Brolin trying to reach for the suitcase and pull it out.
Yeah.
I mean, I know he took it.
Yeah.
But from Anton Chigurh's perspective, I don't remember hearing this screeching.
Right.
It seems like I should have heard some screeching, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because those scratches were from when he first placed them in there. When I saw those scratch marks. It's like an image you can hear.
Yeah, that's great.
Man, the parallel editing is so strong because you basically have two processes at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? And then they start intermingling and they start informing one another. And the placing of attention of the viewer changes how you feel about what's going to happen.
Right.
Because obviously at this point in time, you're aligned with Llewellyn and you want him to get away. And so watching Anton Chigurh commit this massacre next door is insane. And then you don't see Llewellyn get away. You just know he gets away because Chigurh sees that the case has been taken.
Yeah.
That's just a simple, effective way of constructing a scene. Like, it's not like rocket science. It's not crazy filmmaking. The Coen brothers are not fanciful filmmakers.
There's also so many important moments that are omitted from you experiencing them in the film. Like, another notable one is Llewellyn's death.
Yeah.
Yes. I was like, what?
Yeah, you just arrive there and like, oh, who's that body? And I was like, oh shit, that's Llewellyn. That's that's who I'm supposed to be emotionally connected to, and he's gone.
And he's just done. Yeah, I was like, is there something wrong? Did something skip? Because the previous scene is Llewellyn talking to the random lady who wants to sleep with him.
Yeah.
And then it just fades to black and it's kind of strange.
Yeah.
And then you go in to see Tommy Lee Jones playing the sheriff, entering the scene, and it goes all handheld, which is actually quite rare in this film. And it's one of the times where he feels quite close to the case and to what's going on, you know, because for most of the film, the sheriff is quite detached from the going-ons of the violence and the money and the drugs. But here he's like feeling the full force of what is at stake
Yeah.
or what is happening with Anton Chigurh. It's a pretty crazy scene.
Every main character gets at least one moment of POV glance object editing where we get shots directly from their optical perspective. That is Ed Tom Bell's approaching Llewellyn's body in the doorway of the hotel room.
Right.
When it's handheld and he's looking at the carnage and bullet casings and the woman who is floating dead in the pool. I think about this choice, why there are omissions of characters completing key actions, whether that's escaping the clutch of another person or, well, dying. And I return to the street shootout scene where something occurred to me. Oftentimes, when there is a perspective switch within a scene, we're switching to the person who is lower status or losing or about to lose the fight in some way. In the street, we're with Llewellyn Moss as he's fleeing Chigurh. Just before Llewellyn Moss turns the table and gets a shot on Chigurh, we're with Chigurh. And the camera's close to him, and then he's the one who's surprised by Moss popping up.
Right.
So when Llewellyn Moss is killed, and that happens off screen, we cut from Moss's experience over to Sheriff Ed Tom Bell as he's approaching the scene, and he realizes that he's lost everything about this case.
Right.
And it's just utter chaos.
Right.
Even though Moss is losing his life, which is the ultimate thing to lose, that's the moment when Bell's spirit is just crushed.
Right.
There's something about the way that the Coens keep on putting us on the losing experience in this movie.
Isn't it sort of like similar to how Hitchcock describes suspense? Is like, oh, the audience knows something that the person doesn't, like knows something that's about to hit them that they don't know.
Well, I don't know if
At least in the street shootout scene.
Yeah, right, in the streets.
Yeah, I feel like they do purposefully take away information quite a lot.
Yeah.
So they can sort of surprise you later, like, for example, Llewellyn's death. They're pretty good at omitting to make their film efficient. Like, I think the word that I keep coming back to with the Coens is efficiency. Outside of No Country, even when their narratives can get the loosest, they can be very efficient filmmakers. Like, I think about Carla Jean's death, right? That scene, we don't see her die, which thank God we don't have to see that. But we get the point of that scene really quickly is that Carla Jean's the person who decides not to play his game, right?
Yeah.
And that puts her in a position of power over him. And then it just cuts away because that's the whole point of the scene. And so they don't really spend too much time on violence or on how a scene concludes when it doesn't really serve a narrative function, right? But by doing that, they also kind of keep you on your toes for many of the scenes because you never really know what's going on. Like, you look at the stuff happening with Woody Harrelson and Stephen Root. I have no idea what's going on there. Like, who are these people? What is this organization?
Yeah.
What's happening with the drug money? I don't know how any of that connects.
I am still confused as to how Stephen Root fits into the rest of this.
I think I get it.
But it doesn't matter, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter if you don't get it because it just kind of happens. And like Woody Harrelson just kind of comes in. This whole subplot with this organization feels kind of irrelevant, but it is critical in terms of plot. It's how we get Chigurh connected back to Llewellyn.
Everything, including the things that are at first glance confusing or seemingly irrelevant, ties back in both thematically and through the plot. Josh Brolin.
Josh Brolin, not necessary.
No, he is necessary. Just because you mentioned Carla Jean's death, Ben, that's one of the things that they changed from the book, is that Carla Jean sort of falls apart upon encountering Chigurh. It feels like the Coens made the perfect decision to have her be the kind of ideological and experiential counterpart to Chigurh. And even if it ends with her death, which it's implied it does, that scene is the thing that cements the thematic statement in the end.
Yeah. You could almost see Chigurh shaken a little bit. Like he's almost scared. Like he's confused.
Yeah.
It's a really good scene. Like I think they make a good choice. Speaking on changes from the book, like I mentioned how I was confused by that scene when Llewellyn dies and whether I missed something. So I went to look into the book to find that scene. It's even more of an understatement in the book, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. There's a very long scene of him talking to somebody. I think it's a lady. And then after that, it cuts to the sheriff. And then he's just driving up to a motel and there are cops there. And he's like, oh, what's going on? And he's like, oh, wait, that's Llewellyn. That's the whole scene. It's such an understatement. Yeah, you just lose Llewellyn completely.
Damn. What a narrative choice.
Yeah.
Bold narrative.
A lot of what makes the narrative strong, it comes directly from McCarthy's writing. There's something very sparse about it. that is so powerful, but that's also why it lends itself so well to the screen.
I feel like it fits so well within the whole Coen brothers filmography and the idea of you get what you give. In my head, Llewellyn took the money, he didn't save the guy who needed water, and he sort of got from that.
Yeah.
Similarly to how, like, Harley Jean doesn't accept the game, and then Sugar kills her, and then right after gets hit by a car. Like, I feel like there's so many you do something comes back to you sort of moments that clicked in my head. I don't know if it worked in the same clean way for you guys. Like, it was very clear in my head, like, oh, this is, like, the big, like, macro game that the writer is playing here with these characters making these decisions.
I agree. And also, I think there are some curveballs that they throw in there. For example, with Llewellyn not giving the dying cartel man water, the thing that ultimately gets Llewellyn deeper into trouble is that he goes back to give the guy water.
Yeah.
Right.
And then he encounters the truck that chases him and the dog that chases him, and he gets his first bullet wound. Also, with Sugar getting hit by a car in the end, he is ultimately helped out through the generosity of two young boys who are bicycling by. And they, at first, don't accept his money for the shirt until Sugar forces it upon them. And that scene is a counterpoint to an earlier one when Luan Mas is crossing into Mexico.
Right.
And he has to pay and deal with teasing from these three teenagers who essentially begrudgingly and only through extortion help Moss.
Yeah.
That scene is really funny.
It is really funny.
Yeah.
Because at the end, Llewellyn asks for the beer, and the kid's like,
Yeah.
how much do I get for the beer as well? And his friend's like,
Shut up.
It's like, shut up, Brian. Don't do this. He's dying. That's a really funny scene.
Earlier, Wilson, you said that this movie's so serious. It is. But there are some really funny moments.
Yes. I want to go here.
Yes, there are. It's true. It is true. It is true.
When Moss wakes up in Mexico and the mariachi band is playing in his face,
Yeah.
and then he unveils his gaping bullet wound soaked in blood, the poor band just stops playing.
It's such a good moment. Yeah.
They were a good band.
But back to the previous point. I just wanted to add one more thing, which was about Tommy Lee Jones's character.
Yeah.
Who, in my opinion, chooses not to play the game. Like, every time he's offered the opportunity to go in and, like, do some investigating, he's just like, no, I don't think I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
And at the end, he's chilling. He's chilling.
It's because he's an old man now, and this ain't no country for him anymore.
Yeah.
Aha.
But it's true, the fact that if you don't want to play the game, you won't get hit.
But I don't think it's that he doesn't want to play the game. I don't think the sheriff's character is that he doesn't play the game. I feel like he feels out of step with this game. Like, he is from another time,
Right.
and something has gone wrong. And I think there is a comment here about, like, if you want to go into, like, deep thematic territory, right?
I always do.
There is some commentary here about the dark heart of America, which is money, right? And which is the root of a lot of problems in many, many, many Coen films.
Yeah.
Money is always at the core of their films. There's a reason why there's a suitcase of money in Fargo and there's a suitcase of money in No Country. Human greed for the greenbacks is usually what causes downfalls of Coen brother characters.
Yeah, for a while, the messaging and kvetching by Ed Tom Bell about the past and the way things have changed veers on the edge of a sort of conservative argument on, look how things have changed, the past was better. But I think importantly, that gets refuted by the man who Ed Tom Bell visits, named Ellis, who was his grandfather's deputy.
Right, yeah.
In the shack with all the cats.
Yeah.
And Ellis sort of says, like, he tells a story of a man who was brutally murdered in, like, 1908. The point of that is that, no, it's kind of always this way. Ben, as you're saying, it's sort of just in the heart of America. There's always greed and violence, and that's just sort of the way that this country works, and it's always terrible.
Yeah.
And also, it's refuted by the kind of everyday, normal humanity of Ed Tom Bell's wife.
Yeah.
We hear Ed Tom Bell's voiceover sort of bemoaning the way things have changed at the top of the movie. But the first time we meet him, he's heading out from his home, and his wife tells him to be careful, to not get hurt, and to hurt nobody. And that's kind of like a nice 3-part little rule for how to stay above the game.
Yeah.
And sort of unintentionally, that's what Ed Tom Bell does.
Yeah.
Because really, the bad way to say it is he's a coward, but I think the better way to say it is he values life. He values his own life and he values the lives of others. And that's why he's not cut out for the ugliness that runs through this movie.
Right.
He's above it in a
He
way.
is above it.
I have a question. I can't remember if it was one of you who said this just now. Maybe it was I imagined this, but because we were talking about comedy earlier, there are funny moments, like really bleak and dark comic moments in this.
Yeah.
But this is generally quite a realistic film in many ways when you think about the rest of the Coen brothers films.
Right.
But do y'all think that this is or is not a heightened filmic woe?
What you're pointing to, Ben, is that the absurdity in some of their other movies marks itself as such by planting a comedic flag on the absurdity.
Yeah.
But here, there's still as much farcical misunderstanding and characters just not reaching each other in time. As Ed Tom Bell says, now that's aggravating when he encounters the milk. That means that Sugar was just there.
Yeah.
But the absurdity is still here. It's just not marked by comedy.
Yeah, I would agree with Eli. I still think that the coincidences and the character types, like Sugar leans more towards like a tall tale of this serial killer rather than something that is real. That is like the biggest tell for me that this is still above heightened reality.
Okay. I have one bone to pick about this film.
Go on.
One.
Go.
Okay. And it's not really a big bone to pick.
Pick that bone.
So this is from me watching all these Coen films, is that sometimes I find that they're a little alienating because of the heightened world that they create, right? The Coens traffic in a lot of exaggeration, a little bit of caricature,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to characters, but they're really good at it. They're really good at creating characters out of thin air. Within 10 seconds, you get a very full sense of a character, even if it's quite extreme. You'll see that in, for example, Raising Arizona. You see this in Miller's Crossing, which is a gangster movie, but it's a bit odd because the characters can be quite one note. So my bone to pick is actually Carla Jean's mom, which I think they characterize in a very ham-fisted, almost like a parody of a mother-in-law, right? And I found that quite frustrating because they use her as the reason why Llewellyn...
She is such an important part.
Correct?
Yes.
And I was a little irritated by that because I've been thinking about the place of women in Coen films.
Yeah.
And we talked about Carla Jean. She has a great moment. But then with Carla Jean's mom, she's played as the downfall of a man, right? Because she talks too much, blah, blah, blah. And Llewellyn has talked about how annoying she is throughout the film. I was Googling about that scene when Llewellyn dies, and I was trying to find out what people thought about that ellipsis. And I found this thread where somebody asked, how did Llewellyn die? Some asshole's answer was, he died because of his wife, because his wife brought her mom when he told her not to bring her mom, and basically loose lips sink ships, blah, 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 and the wife is the reason why the husband dies, which is bullshit because he dies because he stole the money.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? In the grander scheme of things. But because of the way they've placed this kind of easy target into that film, using this kind of heightened caricature of a character, it kind of irritated me because it felt a little imprecise.
Right.
It felt like the Coens couldn't help but push this little quirk into the film. It frustrated a little bit watching it because so much of the film is so precisely tuned, and then you get to this point. Like even the outlandish characters, like Woody Harrelson's character is pretty outlandish, but he fits into the world, you know? But then you get Carla Jean's mom being kind of not even close to being a real person, I would say, in the context of everyone else. Anyway, that's my soapbox on the down.
I think I agree, Ben. One of the distinguishing things that I'm thinking about with her is that we never see her in her own space. And the Coens, part of what makes the Coens so great at creating characters out of thin air is that you often see characters in the context of their space. Think about the woman who is in the trailer that Anton Chigurh visits when he's trying to figure out information about Llewellyn Moss. And she says, we can't give out no information.
Yeah.
We are very purposefully seeing the desk space around her.
Right.
And we get a read on her very quickly. That feels specific and not caricatured, even though she's really there to be a plot obstacle to Chigurh. Yeah, we don't see Carla Jean's mom's space, and she becomes a narrative convenience.
It wouldn't bug me if it was not that big of a plot point.
Yeah.
I don't mind her being the plot point, but I think it's more of a treatment of the character, you know? Like when you play her this way, then it seems like she's running her mouth, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of how they're playing her. She's running her mouth.
Right.
But she's just an innocent person who doesn't understand the world that is happening around her. This high level of crime that she's currently embedded into. She doesn't know this.
Right.
Like if I was in her position, I could be saying anything. I don't know. I don't know what's coming. I don't know what trouble Llewellyn is in. it's really about the treatment of the character. And so I think it's okay to laugh at characters. Even that lady in the trailer park, there's something funny about that scene because she doesn't even know what she's up against. She's just being kind of bitchy, but it's a funny scene because we've already seen Sugar kill somebody.
Yeah.
We've already seen what he can do, and she's just like, I'm not doing nothing. I don't care whoever you are. I don't get out with your stupid hair. That's kind of like her vibe. And it is funny. And I wouldn't say you're laughing at her, but there's something about her character that is funny.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, because like I've said, she doesn't know what she's up against.
I definitely want to return to this thread in our subsequent Coen episodes about the placement of women in their films and in the placement and often lack of people of color in their films. I do think they have a lot to say about the violence and darkness of white male America. That's pretty self-apparent. And in Fargo, it's positioned against Frances McDormand's character.
Yeah.
But here, there's less of a counterpoint, unless we're really talking about Carla Jean's last scene, I think.
I got one thing about this, but I don't know how to seg into it naturally. What was the last thing we talked about?
Gender?
Yeah.
It's gonna be hard to segue from that.
I feel like we always end up talking, like, the gender's always, like, one of the last things. Like, we just, like, always, like, just talk about it before the end of the episode. Or, like, yeah, there's not a lot of women in this movie. You're like, yeah, okay, that's been our episode. Thanks for listening.
Oh, yeah, by the way, this movie sucks. Peace.
How do we, how do I seg into this?
What topic is it, Ben?
I just want to talk about detail.
Like the sweat under Ed Tom Bell's arm is a great detail. I saw that this time and I was like, wow, they like put that in there.
I didn't notice that.
Sweat.
No, because this time when I was watching it, like I realized there's so many great details. Not just details in an insert, but details in general. You talked about that lady and her space, right?
Yeah.
And how that creates. Oh, this is a good segue. That lady and her space and how it creates a sense of the kind of person that she is.
Yeah.
But there's so many other moments here. Like I think about the first time we meet Llewellyn Moss, he picks up the shell from his rifle. And that's a very small detail, but it kind of gives you a sense of the kind of person he is.
Yes.
And it's about process, but it's also just like little small character things.
That little beat to introduce his character honestly reminded me a lot of our conversation around First Cow and how we meet Cookie Figowitz when he is flipping over a bug.
Yeah. Soft boy.
That's true. I don't think Llewellyn's a soft boy.
No, Cookie Figowitz.
Hard boy.
The OG
I'm kidding.
soft boy. First soft boy. Change the name.
The production design is so fantastic
it is.
in how they create a sense of place and character. Like with Llewellyn's trailer, you look at like the insulation in the bottom of his trailer. Like that's just a detail that's there. That's a nice detail. But we've talked about costumes.
Let's talk about how I thought this was set in the 1800s because I thought I mixed this up with There Will Be Blood. No,
They didn't have cars back then.
no, they did it. They did. I was like, oh, okay. This is a lot more modern.
Here's an interesting little production tidbit. When the oil rig catches fire in No Country for Old Men. I mean, when the oil rig catches fire in There Will Be Blood.
Yes.
Those two movies were filming in similar areas at the same time. The
Oh.
fire caused production to halt on No Country for Old Men because the sky was
Wow.
filled with smoke.
What?
Oh my God. Thanks, Paul Thomas Anderson.
PTA new hair competition.
Yeah. He was already attacking them for that Oscar.
He was afraid.
He knew they were going to compete in the same ceremony.
He knew what he was doing.
Okay, here's my hot take for the Oscars that year. I think No Country for Old Men deserves the Best Picture Oscar over There Will Be Blood. They're both great movies.
I have not seen There Will Be Blood. so
Really?
I can't say.
Oh, Wilson, I think you'll like it.
I haven't seen it in a long time, so I can't remember.
Maybe we need to do a PTA, a little couple
Ooh.
episodes.
Oh, I think we do.
But I really love Juno.
Wait, what?
It's like my little oh, Lady Bird was great that year. Juno's great. Juno's great.
Juno is great. Home Slice.
What else was in the
Yeah,
running
Best
that
Picture.
year?
Okay, it was No Country for Old Men, Atonement, Juno, Michael Clayton, and There Will Be Blood.
It's a good group.
It's a good group. That's a very white group.
Yeah.
What is Michael Clayton?
That's the one with we talked about him in this podcast.
George
already.
Clooney?
Yeah, George Clooney.
We talked
Oh.
about him.
Yeah, Amal's husband. Yeah.
Amal's husband, Clooney.
Yes. Wild year for Oscars.
You know what I like about this movie? I like that even though so much stuff is happening, they still spend time in the dialogue scenes. And that in the dialogue scenes, you have people telling stories. And I think this happens a lot in Coen films.
Yeah.
Where people like to tell little stories within the story. And Ed Tom Bell does this a few times. Like he tells his dreams. My favorite one is the one where he tells Carla Jean this story, and then later on she asks him, "Is that a true story?"
No, she asked him the name of the character, and he's like, "Who's that?"
Yeah. But I think that is a very direct reference to Fargo. The famous thing about Fargo is that they start with a stupid thing where it's this true story, but it's obviously not.
Yeah.
People thought it was a true story, like audiences in real life.
Yeah, but I never understood why they did that, and they never really explained themselves too well. People have theories and blah blah blah, but that conversation kind of gave me the answer to that question. Like I said before, which is one Coen film will answer the questions of the other. And kind of what I got from this was that it doesn't really matter if the stories are true or not, right? It really doesn't matter. It's just about whether you believe them. Like, do you believe that this could happen?
Right.
Like, do you believe that even if the heightened world that the Coens create, could this happen in America? Right. And the reason why these films work is because you have to believe them to some extent. No matter how crazy they are, no matter how crazy the Big Lebowski is, you kind of believe it a little bit, you know?
That's an interesting way to frame it, Ben. I'm now thinking back on the ones that don't work as well for me, and maybe it comes down to belief.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I do think that they all have a little something to reflect about America.
Yeah.
And that's why it'll be so fun to take a look at an upcoming 3 very different takes on what that means.
Yeah. Hello, America.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Okay, are we wrapping it up?
Yeah, I feel like
Feels
that was a
we are.
good ending point, Eli. Good clincher.
In first grade, my teacher said I was the clincher king
in terms of
writing the last sentences of writing pieces.
Sweet.
There's a little fact for you for free.
A little free fact. Cool. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Deep Cut. Please rate and review because that helps us keep making the show. Be sure to subscribe or follow to us where you listen to podcasts so you'll know when our next episode drops. You can give us a follow on Twitter and Instagram at DeepCutPod. That's where we'll be announcing our Deep Cut picks for the next 3 episodes on the Coen brothers. Join us to talk about movies on our Discord server, to which you'll find a link in the description. Thank you to Justina Yem for our beautiful artwork.
I'm Wilson.
I'm Ben.
I'm Eli. Take care, and we're looking forward to talking about more movies with you next time.
Do y'all think they should have a prequel called No Country for Young Men?
Yes, Country for Young Men.
Yes, country for young men. YMCA.
No Country for Old Ben.
Ah!
I'm not that old. I'm aging rapidly, but I'm not that old.
Oh, rapidly.
He's reverse Benjamin buttoning,
Reverse Benjamin Button.
Yeah, a year at a time.
so he's aging normally. I got here the same way the coin did.
What?
Look, all I'm gonna say is I got here the same way the coin did.
What does that mean? You were flipped? Your parents flipped for you, Eli?
What?
I'm confused.